soy Joe, Kimberly HayDay Movement.
And I'm Amanda Day,
And you are listening to the Fundraising HayDay podcast. Get excited.
where we cover the how-tos of grants and fundraising.
And how we can all do a better job of changing the world through philanthropy.
And Patreon subscribers can get these episodes early. Well, hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining the podcast. Before we jump into today's incredible interview, I want to remind you all that Kimberly and I are bringing to bear our 50 plus years of experience and over 150 podcast episodes and interviews. We're combining all of that knowledge in the creation of our 8-week intensive grant training known as the Grants Lab. It is a great place for you, as well as your colleagues, your board members, your volunteers, whoever you want to bring with you, right? It's for up to 5 people in any one organization to come and learn about how grants work, how to put together quality proposals, how grant writing really is a team sport because it takes information from finance. It takes the leadership of your executive director. It takes the buy-in of your board. It takes everybody understanding how grants work to be effective when it comes to proposal development and successful submissions, right? So we encourage you to come and check out the Grants Lab. We offer over 14 hours of training. There's 2 one-on-one coaching calls. There is a review of a previously denied grant application of your choosing that will come back and help edit and review for you, as well as some writing assignments along the way to help you create a template of a grant proposal for one of your programs. So it's just a lot is offered and packed into the 8 weeks of the Grants Lab. To learn more, visit our website, haydayservices.com. That's HAYDAY services.com. And you can join our wait list, find the next cohort, and just learn everything there is to know about the Grants Lab.
But y'all, if you want to register for the Grants Lab, that's open too. So you don't have to join the wait list. You can just go on and register.
Absolutely.
You there. So what we don't need and never did are more reasons to create polarizing stereotypes, right? So when Amanda and I saw the title of the session at the Grant Summit powered by the Grant Professional Association, so let's see if we can do this without losing our family-friendly rating.
Yes.
So I'm going to say the first part of the title of the webinar or session, but when I get to the part that might be, I'll start off and say the first word of it, and then you go beep, and then I'll mouth the word. Okay.
That's perfect.
Let's go.
I like it.
So, so when Amanda and I saw the title of the session led by Maggie Dennis, Ageism is a Mother, we're ready to explore this sensitive topic with grace and humor.
Very true. Maggie Dennis, GPC, has been a professional grant writer and consultant for 14 years. Prior to starting StoryForge, which I love the name of her company, we have some incredibly creative people in our midst with the names of their things. So prior to starting StoryForge in 2010, she had a career as a historian and museum professional, first at UCLA and then the Smithsonian Institute. She specializes in helping nonprofit leaders identify and clarify their organization's unique impact and how to use storytelling as a tool to open doors to funding and build community awareness and support. We recorded this interview live at the 2024 Grant Summit powered by the Grant Professionals Association in a very bustling exhibit hall. So there could be a little bit of background noise, but it was still so fun to talk to Maggie about this unique topic and just get some insight on what that is like. So we hope you enjoy as much as we did.
So listen, y'all, we are thrilled to have Kim Joyce and Associates returning as the season 8 sponsor for the first half of our season 8, which is crazy. CEO Kim Joyce and her team are celebrating 15 years of success with new service lines, all while expanding the depth and the breadth of their existing services. Kim is joining us to talk about trends in the field and more with a mini series that you'll hear at the beginning of each of the 12 episodes that Kim Joyce and Associates are sponsoring this season.
Kim Joyce and Associates' new training center offers some very specific topics in the grant field. What are some examples of the training you offered, and why are you choosing the approach you did?
We're super excited about launching our training center in 2025. in really coordination with our 15-year anniversary. So we wanted to offer a little bit of a different style and approach with our trainings. Some trainings are basic grants 101. So we have chosen to do some different topics like survey design, evaluation, and then different trainings with several different topics throughout the trainings. We've chosen our format so that people can really dig deep into the trainings, come out with actionable steps so they can implement them in their jobs and what they're doing, rather than it just being a quick, intro on something. We wanted to offer trainings that were a little more in depth. So that's the approach that we've been taking.
Very nice. To find out more about Kim Joyce and Associates and their many incredible service lines, visit kimjoyceandassociates.com. They are a one-stop shop for all your grant-related needs. Well, hello, Maggie. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Love it. So, as with every guest on our podcast, we always want to start with their origin story into the grant world. So, how did you find yourself in this profession?
Yes, well, I lived in DC for 15 years. I worked at the Smithsonian Institution during that time.
Nice.
And at a certain point, my husband and I decided we just can't live in DC anymore. We wanted to come back to Colorado. We're both natives.
Okay.
I did not know that.
I didn't either.
Yes. And so we tried various ways of making that transition and nothing was working. So we just decided to quit our jobs and careers, sell our house, and move across country back to Colorado.
Wow.
And we picked Fort Collins as the place we wanted to live. So once we got here, we were renting a house and we didn't have jobs. And
No pressure, no worries.
pressure.
Everything is fine.
Acting like, I was 20 something
Hey.
or whatever. And so I started looking around and I thought, where do my skills overlap with the community need? Right. And that's when I hit upon grant writing, because I'm a historian by training. I know how to do research. I know how to write.
Yeah.
I know how to do oral history interviews, which is actually a really useful skill for grant writing. And so,
That's right.
yeah. And so I thought, well, this seems like an opportunity. And so I, in another crazy moment, decided I'll just start a consulting practice because I had never written grants before. Why not? Which works in Colorado. I don't know if I would recommend doing that anywhere else, but and it worked. So that was a kind of a weird segue into how I started StoryForge and became a grant writing consultant in 2010.
StoryForge.
StoryForge.
That's a really great name.
Yeah, that was a fun part I like wordplay, so
We do too.
yeah, of course. So, but one thing I really like about the profession is that people do that. They come from all different backgrounds, and mostly some sort of writing background brings people to grant writing, but it just makes for a great community, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's one of,
It's really nice.
I've only been in the grant community really, so I can't really compare to other professions, but I love how welcoming and friendly and how helpful really the majority of grant professionals are with one another.
Right.
So
yeah,
It's
lovely
true.
place.
I mean, and if anyone has a partner who is in the accounting field or medical field and wants to let us know how that is,
We're here for
I'm
it.
just thinking we're really nice, but I don't want to
Yeah.
cast aspersions on other fields.
Yes.
Although we're recording this live at the 2024 Grant Summit, as we talk about in the intro. And right before we came in, there was Amanda and I came in a day early to get things organized, and there was a mortgage banking conference here. And it was just the vibe was different. I'm going to stick with
Different.
the vibe was different.
yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
Just saying.
As I think we talked about in the opening session yesterday, somebody was talking about finding their people.
Yeah, that was
It was
me.
you.
Hang on, it was you.
And I really felt like, yeah, that's totally relatable. I feel very fortunate that I found GPA during this journey because of this crazy way I came into it. It's hard to imagine I don't think I would have been successful without it.
No. Well,
Me neither.
Well, and I, the first couple of years, I got voluntold into the field. And the first probably 3 or 4 years I was doing it, I didn't know another grant professional. And
Oh,
so,
yeah.
I mean, I was figuring out on my own and I was doing an okay job of it because
Yeah.
I'm an intelligent person and I know how to read and write and follow directions. So I was doing okay, but it was amazing going from that to finding this place
Yeah.
and having just so many doors open
Yeah.
and just all the little nuance things
Yeah.
you learn from other, like, oh, I never would have thought about, instead of writing it directly in the portal, putting it in a Word
Oh
document
my
first. Those
gosh,
things that,
yes.
because the application doesn't suggest that, right?
Ask
No.
me how I know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
right.
it's those little nuance sometimes are the best nuggets.
Yeah. When I first started, there was the Colorado chapter was defunct at that time.
Mhm.
And so I organized my own little hyper local group of grant writers. I was like, let's just get together once a month and
Yeah.
we can share sob stories and but we can,
Absolutely.
like read my LOI and
Uh-huh.
how did you solve this problem? And so we had that going for a couple of years, I think, and then thankfully Colorado now has a chapter that's really active. So
Very nice.
yeah. So but yeah, do it.
Mhm.
Find your people.
Absolutely.
It's
Find your
true.
people.
So speaking of finding your people, why we wanted to talk to you today is because we were looking at the schedule of the
Mhm.
conference, and so Amanda just doesn't cuss at all, and I enjoy a good swear word. I think, if it's good enough for Shakespeare, I feel like it's good enough for me. So we saw the title, and because we want to keep our podcast rating is safe for all ages, I'll do the yeah. But it was Ageism as a Mother beeper. And so I was like, we got to talk to Maggie. We got to find out about this. So my question in looking at this, as a person moving into, I call it the younger part of being old. I mean, it's, because I feel like because I'm a product of Western civilization, I'm really used to thinking in 3 acts, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm in the first part of the 3rd act, but in each
Fair enough.
act has scenes that move it forward too. So that's how I look at it. But I was thinking about that and thinking about the term ageism and thinking how, yes, I experience it to a certain extent now in ways that don't necessarily bother me. Like somebody wants to call me ma'am. I'm down with that because I'm from the South and I'm like, I am a ma'am.
Mhm.
You may call me that. You don't have to say, hey, you or anything like that. It's
I don't mind.
respectful.
I'm like, it's
It's
polite.
respectful. But different people have different thoughts
This is
about
true.
that.
This is true.
And I traveled with my husband. He's was born in Chile, and we were on the subway in Santiago, and men were just getting up in droves, not to admire my beauty, but to offer me a seat. Because I'm just like, I'm good. In Spanish, it's a little bit different, but it's like thanks, but I'm good. But
Yeah.
so those things, okay. And then there's the ageism discriminatory thing, but then I've also seen it cut both ways, where someone my age might be like, oh God, Gen Z. Oh, I don't want them. I don't want them here in management. They're so hard to work with. And I'm like, wow, that's also a strikingly generalized statement to make about a whole group of people just by age. So I just wanted to get us started with this conversation to have you talk about how you define ageism. And how can we talk about that?
Yes. Well, I mean, if you look it up, you'll find that ageism is discrimination based solely on someone's age, right? I mean but that opens up a lot of conversation and thought about how do we actually experience that? What are our own biases? Those kinds of questions. And I came to this topic and to this title because I had my first experience as being the recipient of ageism in the workplace, right about the time the proposal deadline was. And so I wrote it really fast. I was like, because I was just
It was on your brain
in a
and
rage,
feeling about,
I was angry, and hence the title, right? Because that's expressed how I felt being the recipient of this ageism.
Do you mind sharing a little bit about that, or not? You don't have to.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
However you want to couch it, however you want to.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good
the
example of a type of ageism.
Okay,
because we can talk about that too. But I had a client that I'd had for many years, and things started to get kind of weird and uncomfortable, and we were having conversations. Like because I had this client for so long, I spent a year trying to work it out.
Yeah.
which is a really long time for me.
Sure.
You
It's a
know,
long time for anybody.
Yeah. And so, but at one point we had a really, frank conversation where I just started asking questions and to find out where the dissatisfaction was. And then I heard things like, well, I know you said that you're having a hard time keeping up. And I'm thinking, I didn't say that.
And you started to slide off your earrings.
Yeah,
And you're like, no, tell me more.
Tell me more.
Crack your nuts.
Crack my nuts.
Yeah. It's on.
And, and I'm trying to remember what.
Having trouble keeping.
Yeah, right. Oh, and the other one in the same conversation was because we were talking about they had decided to submit a grant, and I didn't hear, know, or anything about it, right? And I said, I'm curious why you chose to do that. And I said, well, it was easier to do it ourselves than to explain it to you.
After you've been writing grants for them
for years.
For years.
Yeah.
Oh.
Not only am I making reactions to this, I'm in a transition with a client.
Yeah.
And it's not, I'm a byproduct of what's going on, which was a lot of turnover and churn and some board difficulties.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, thinking about how things also have gotten weird. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
We're not the only two people. And I think the more we can normalize normal parts of aging for women, for example, or in the workplace, and not to go, and then they did this, those,
right. You kind of have to get that off your chest.
But to let people understand that maybe that's how it happens and you don't realize what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. I think that's true. And I think to your point, where we kind of started this question, in order to think about this as a proposal for the GPA summit, I tried to get out of my own head at that point and started, because I'm 58, I experienced this as ageism. But then I started thinking, well, like you said, what is ageism and who experiences ageism? And so I looked it up, and I want to share this with you because it's kind of funny. And to your point, it's, entry level people in their 20s and older folks, late career people in their 50s
and up,
are probably stereotypically the people most likely to experience ageism.
Yes,
that's what I thought.
Right, and so it's not just us.
No,
right? But it's been so long since I was in my 20s. I was
that's fair.
What is that?
But I'm glad, because I'm like, you thank you for putting it so succinctly. It really is on each end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And the other thing was that it said mid-career people in their late 40s and early 50s can also experience it, right? And I thought, well, who's left?
Is that everybody?
People in their 30s.
People in their late 20s, early people like 28 to 38.
No. Yeah, right.
There's a sweet spot.
There's a sweet spot where maybe you, and I thought,
That's not right.
when I was doing my research, it's like no one said that, but it just kind of like by default, I was like, well, who's left?
30s, in your 30s.
Which is makes it like this is a topic for all of us, for many of us, except for those folks in their 30s.
They need to listen up, because it's going to happen. It may have happened in their 20s. It's going to happen when they get older.
Well, and it just made me, and I hadn't thought about this conversation I'd had with the boss in a long time. It's not only discrimination, but sometimes it's people have excuses made for them because of their age. We had a fellow employee who, she was probably about 28 years old, and good at her job in the fact that she could meet deadlines. She was the work she was good at. Her personality, she was one of she'd email, and if you didn't answer in 10 minutes, she was at your desk going, "Did you see my email? Where's my info?"
Oh, that's just
I know that person.
Obnoxiousness knows no age.
And a lot of other things that were just, and so several of us had said, all of us shared the same boss and had expressed some concern about the fit with the organization, and they kept coming back to, well, but she's really good at the job. She gets all the stuff done.
Right.
Yes, but she makes everybody else miserable. And finally, the conversation was, well, I think that's just her age. She's like 28. And I had to say to my boss, I said, do you remember me because I'd been working there a while at that point.
Right.
I said, do you remember me when I started here? And he said, yeah. I said, did I act like that? And he was like, well, no, but I said, I was 25 when I started.
Right.
I said, it's not, that is not an age thing.
Right.
That is a personality trait. which is a
Yes.
different thing. But I think sometimes because of your age, people can make
Yes.
excuses. So I think it works both ways too.
It's
There is
true.
discrimination, and then there is also they're
Right.
going to get a pass because they can't help it.
I think it's a really interesting point about. I attended a session yesterday here. It was really great about generational. Actually, it was about intergenerational collaboration, which is something else we
Nice.
could talk about.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
I think
and
it's
I
down
thought-
here somewhere.
But there was a lot of discussion about boomers and Gen X and millennials and what are they?
Gen Z.
Gen Z, right? And everyone was in the room. There were represented people who were all of those
Nice.
ages, which made it really interesting. But it also really got me thinking about how we might stereotype based on, you hear a lot about boomers. Let's just start there.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
True, you do.
You do. But that a lot of the conversation has been about boomers and millennials,
Yeah.
right?
And
Gen Z, they
some
just
of it-
ignore us, right?
some of it about boomers is deserved. I mean, there's a
Yes.
reason why there's a stereotype. When
Yes.
Yes.
sometimes I'm like, wow, y'all.
But it can't be all of them.
No.
No.
It's
No.
a stereotype and it's a cliche, and then those are dangerous things to perpetuate, as we all know.
Right.
Mhm.
And I think the other thing that you alluded to when we were talking here was that whole question of intersectionality. And how your multiple identities can impact not only your view of the world, but how people view you. So it's not just your age, but your gender, your race or ethnicity.
Yeah.
Are you a parent?
Yeah.
You're not a parent.
Yes.
Do you have grandchildren? I'm a caregiver. Let
Yep.
me tell you how that has impacted the way people view me. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
And contributes to the whole ageism thing.
Yeah, sure.
So,
Yeah.
it's complex and individualized, but there's also this layering on of stereotypes and generalizations and bias. So,
Yeah.
lots to think about.
It is. Well, and that segues real nicely into the question about how do you think that the U.S.'s aging population will change the potential for ageism in the workplace?
I mean, I think that I'm Gen X.
Welcome.
Let's just welcome to
All
the
of us.
club.
Yes.
Yeah, but Amanda's like on the lower end of the spectrum. I'm like pushing the
Right.
upper limits.
Yeah.
Right.
Every now and then someone tries to squeeze me into millennial. I'm like, no. I still
That's
make
interesting.
it.
As we were talking yesterday in the session, I'm on the cusp. Right?
Yes.
I'm one of the oldest Gen Xers, but I feel solid Gen X.
Same.
Same.
In that,
Same.
and so I don't feel like, but I know people my age, like literally my age,
Who identify
seem
more
to
with
be-
boomers
well, or they're somewhere,
in
it's
between.
like- and I asked
straddle
myself,
the
why
fence.
are
They're
you doing?
Bexes.
Why are you doing that? That's kind of a boomer thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What's up with that? You're my age, but
Truth.
yeah. But I think that so there's been a lot of discussion about boomers because
Mhm.
it's such a large generation,
Yeah.
and
And
for
they're-
those who
They're starting not to retire.
they've been not retiring.
They've been like, not everybody's like, oh, they're going to retire. And it's like,
Nope.
maybe they're not.
Nope.
Now what happens?
Well,
Yeah.
and when you think about it, I totally get why that is. But
Hello,
I mean,
money. Hello, money.
But money is a big part of it. But I think that from my perspective as a Gen Xer, we've always looked at boomers as like they're really large. They're going to break Social Security.
Yeah.
There'll be nothing left for us. They're never going to retire. Like all of that sort of thing. And I mean, just based on the size of the population,
Yeah.
there may be
Yeah.
some truth to that. But
Yeah. But also not their fault. It's not like
right,
they're like,
right.
everybody have lots of babies right now. Okay,
Right.
great.
But I think that also because of those very factors, they've kind of led the conversation
Yeah.
on ageism in a lot of ways. So like we're talking about it,
Yeah.
probably a lot because of boomers,
Mhm.
and that's interesting to me. But I think the other thing that's interesting about it is the other end of it, the millennials, the Gen Zers, who come into the workplace with they bring a very different life experience.
Yeah.
And they have very, very different
Different
attitudes
attitudes. We
about
yeah.
the workplace. And I think we have a lot to learn from them.
Yes.
Absolutely. We
Mhm.
actually talked about this yesterday with
Mhm.
another guest on the podcast
Yeah,
about
the keynote for
the keynote. Yeah. Who was talking about instead of my job is my self-worth, it's more
Yes.
like my life's purpose is,
Mhm.
and this job helps me get there.
Right.
which doesn't, it's not just semantics. I mean,
Right.
it's really, I thought it is not something when I was coming up, it's like you give it everything because that is how people, you are what you do.
Exactly.
And if you don't do a good job, you're not a good person.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's true. And I have a friend who I talked to about this subject because he's a millennial. He works in helping transgender people navigate the health space.
Oh,
the
wow.
Healthcare space, right? Which is
Complex.
an amazing complex thing that he's able to do. But we were talking about millennials because he's a millennial. And he said, my generation is coming into the workplace and working through our careers with a completely different attitude about work. And, we're not going to, it's about that work-life balance partly, but the way he said it, which I thought was really interesting, is like, we're not going to, I'm going to swear, bust our ass
Oh, that's cool.
for decades, and retire at 65, exhausted and broken. Right?
And die.
And then wait. And then he said, wait to die, which I thought was interesting. It's like, yes, I know these people, but,
I know these people.
And he said, we're figuring that out. Like, we're going to do this differently and we're going to pace ourselves and we're going to figure out how we can slow down as we get older, like work less so that we can work longer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I thought, well, there's a healthy, interesting idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a life goal for me.
That makes me think of, this is years ago. I was teaching for a training company, and wherever we would teach, whoever hosted the class, we get so many free seats in the room. So I get there the first morning, setting up, and my local contact was like, "Hey, I've got a problem." I'm like, "Okay, what's going on?" And she said, "We have 3 free seats." It was a police department that was hosting. "We have 3 free seats," but she's like, "They've already been like, we have police officers that were interested, so we've already given it away." But she's like, "We have this one volunteer who really helps us out." And she was like, "I was hoping I could give him a spot," but she's like, "I've got to give it to my paid employees first." But she's like, "He's here. What do I do?" And my first thing is like, well, I can't give away free training. But then I met him. The man was 93 years old.
Give him all the free things.
I said, "You know what?" I said, "Tell him to come on in." I didn't even call the main company.
No.
I'm like, "You know what? I'm making this call."
Right.
So he sat on the front row, and he took more copious notes than I've seen any other. And of course, on the break, I come up to him and I said, "Sir," I said, "I love that you're here." I said, "Can I ask, why? What are you interested?" And he said, "You know what?" He goes, "I was a police officer." He's like, "A whole group of us went through the department together. We all retired together at 55, because that's often when police officers will retire." He goes, "I watched almost every single one of them go home, sit on their couch and die."
Yeah.
And I decided that wasn't going to me, that I was always going to be learning. And he goes, "And I'm 93 years old and I'm still learning."
Yeah.
Sharp as the proverbial tack.
Was. And I was like, that is life goals right there.
Yeah,
like I loved, but I mean, he got to pick and choose, if he wanted to go to
Right, he could have been somewhere else.
He could have.
Yeah.
But I just thought, I was like, that's a whole different, that just opened up the definition of retirement to me. Like, it doesn't have to be, okay, I'm not working anymore, so I don't have to do anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's true too.
Yeah.
So that's a very positive note, but to take us back to the cold wind of doom.
This is your job, Kimberly.
It is my job. But actually, in all seriousness, that is how I plan to age on, is to just keep learning for all sorts of reasons. And I think, and learning things of interest and not just fossilizing.
Yes.
So speaking of that, if you were thinking about, and I know you're going to have a discussion din. We're recording this in the morning. You're having your discussion din at the Grant Summit in the afternoon, and there are going to be a ton of examples. But you shared one that was your personal example, and I thank you. Have you talked to other people? Are there other examples of ageism? Maybe if you have some grant world specific ones, or nonprofits or local government, whatever.
Yeah.
Just to help people go, oh yeah, this is what it is.
Like,
so they can
yes.
recognize it.
That.
Or they can maybe go, oh, maybe I shouldn't say or do that.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a big part of what the conversation is about.
Let's just
raising
talk
the
about
awareness and becoming familiar with your own bias and being able to recognize it when you see it. Right?
So
happening in the workplace. Let's just stick to the workplace for the purpose
of
this
purpose of this conversation.
So we talked about, my examples were like what I would call microaggressions, right?
Oh right, yeah. Oh yeah, it's like
things people say.
We heard you had trouble keeping.
You're right.
Do you want to sit?
Your heart.
Do you want to sit closer to the speaker? Yeah.
Right.
Fair.
So we've talked about that.
Yeah.
Some other examples are like maybe more egregious in some ways, but are like monetary examples. So, for example, limited opportunities, either because people perceive you as being too old or too young,
Mhm.
right? And compensation disparities based on age. I think so. There is real impact to this. That
Yeah,
can
no, it's
impact your
true.
livelihood.
Mhm.
One of the things I'm thinking about, quickly segue here,
Yeah, sure.
in terms of the intersectionality is in the grant profession is, are you a staff member at a nonprofit or organization, or are you a consultant, and how does this look different? I'd like to have a conversation about that since I'm a consultant. I want to talk to more people about that in my session, because I don't know if I honestly don't know the answer to that yet. Does it make a difference? Are consultants better positioned to navigate ageism?
I'm going to vote yes, because I was an employee, a team member for
Yeah.
years and years, and I didn't start consulting until I was in my 50s.
Mhm.
And also once I let my hair go to its natural color, I'm just saying there, for me as an instructor, when I was traveling all around the country and I could walk into a room where there, are sheriffs and police officers and, and they're in uniform, and I'm like, well, I hope you all agree with me because you are armed. But, but in seriousness, I think it gave me a gravitas to
Yes,
presenting where I
Right.
was. And I'm not saying you can't teach and train when you're young. I'm not saying that at all, but walking into a room of strangers, many of whom come from very hierarchical organizations.
Yeah.
I think
Yes,
I
yeah.
was perceived differently, and I was fine with that, just like I'm fine with the ma'am.
Right.
And I can go in and talk with board members as a consultant
Right.
when I often feel the need to speak truth to power.
Right.
And we're not going to rant. Amanda's like, oh no.
Rant
But
away.
but to go
It's our
but to
podcast.
go in with this aging
Yeah,
face
right.
and this hair and sit down and go, yeah, I've been doing this for almost 30 years, and this is actually some best practices around boards or not what's occurring here. Let's talk about it.
Right.
There's not, I'm not going to get shut down because
Right.
whether or not I know what I'm doing is a different discussion, but I look like I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I think there'll be a time when there's I'll go over the edge of it. Now it's like, oh, she might be out of touch, which gets back to ageism. So
Yes,
I'm like right there.
yeah.
I'm in the sweet spot right
Yeah,
there. I think probably
yeah.
your 50s up to mid 60s are the sweet spot.
That could be. Yeah, that's interesting.
But that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Well, and also as a consultant, frankly, like I have 5 clients. If, like this example I gave you, if something goes south, I do not need to renew that contract, and it's not my whole livelihood. So I think in terms of that monetary impact of ageism,
It's a little,
I have a lot more flexibility.
Yeah, same.
As a consultant.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think of a lot of things as a consultant. I mean, there's things I would never have said as an employee,
But you can
Yes.
but I can say as a consultant, because it's the same
And
thing. I
as
have
an older woman, you can
Oh,
say it. Like
it's
the
the
freedom to just
best.
speak
well,
your
not only
mind.
the freedom, but like finally coming into my own. I mean, there were things that I never would have argued about in my 20s, and looking back now, I'm like, oh, I just want to go back to her and go, sweetie,
speak up.
Right.
say it,
Yeah.
use your voice.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you don't have those years of experience behind you,
Right.
it's hard to be like, hey, listen
Right.
to me. I swear I know what I'm talking about.
Right.
So,
Right.
oh yeah, and being. I mean, I know this is all about ageism, but like
Yeah.
oftentimes I worked in local government as a grant professional for a
Yeah.
long time. So oftentimes it's me and a bunch of our department heads. It's in the South, a very heavily male,
Yes.
white male
Yes.
dominated
Yes.
room. And here's, 25-year-old me coming in going, no, you can't do that.
Right.
And these guys aren't my boss. I'm
Right.
not their employee because I'm
Yes.
reporting to this other guy over here. But at the same time, I'm not in charge of them either. And
Right.
trying to get them to listen to me sometimes can be very difficult because they just like, oh, you sweet little thing, And I'm like,
Mm.
But whereas before I would just move on.
Yeah.
But now I'd be like, no, sir.
Right. Right.
So-
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So 2 more.
Oh,
If we have
please.
time.
I know.
Yes,
I
go.
was like, I want to hear some more examples.
Yes.
So please.
Okay. So another category of examples
Yeah.
is work culture. So being excluded from meetings, from discussions, your opinions
You're not
being
invited to the table.
not getting invited to the table, your opinions being discounted or not heard, unequal opportunities for advancement and that sort of thing. Or,
Yeah.
I thought about that again as a consultant because I see like each client I have has a different work culture that I have to navigate
Right.
into somehow. that can really impact how ageism is experienced, if it's experienced, right?
Mhm.
And so I think there's an opportunity there for workplaces to
Yeah.
work on their own work culture and have these kinds of discussions.
Yeah.
Because it's going to vary from one place to the next.
It really is. I think
Mhm.
you're right. And I think that is an example of how, as a consultant who is aging into a different kind of category, I think it can be easier to navigate because
Yeah.
you do have those multiple clients,
Right,
right? And you're
right.
not, it's, you're coming in as the expert. They're hiring you because they need a
Right,
person with your skill set. You're not navigating the internal politics
right,
of,
right.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and then one last one. I really like this one.
Bring it on.
You're
Okay.
going to love this. Okay. Internalized ageism, right? As a, like, your bias
I'm trying not to hit the
turned
table.
inward on yourself.
Oh, yeah.
I told you not to hit the
Wow.
table early. I'm trying. I was
I
like,
know, I'm
I was
doing
like,
this too.
yeah, yes. She said,
Emphatically.
yes, yes. You can do it to yourself
Yeah.
Think about
Yes.
that.
all the time. Oh, I'm too
and
old
it takes
to do
a lot
that.
of self-awareness to catch yourself doing that. And it could be anything, right? It could be you looking at yourself in the mirror in the morning or
Or
you know.
trying something new,
Yeah.
or trying. I have finished a young adult novel, historical fiction, and
Ooh.
I am pursuing the traditional publication process.
Mhm.
Okay, think about most of the writers you studied in high school. They weren't busting out in their 50s and 60s. They were
Right.
publishing young.
Right.
When you look at the industry as a whole, that's not the case.
Yeah.
But there's that they'll think I'm too old. Who am
Yeah.
I to write a young adult
Right.
book?
There you
I'm
go.
too old. And I was participating actually in a training with Julie Bull, who's presenting here. And that was like, you had this hot seat moment where you're doing that. And what was one of your fears? And that was
Right.
one of them. And it's just like, I can do it to myself if I'm not careful. I'm like, well,
Yes.
you're going to be this age anyway. So you might as well try
Yes.
and get an agent. And if you
Yeah.
can't get an agent, try an independent publisher. And if you can't get an independent publisher,
Right.
bring it out yourself. And then a dear friend of mine who is in her late 60s just brought out her first novel because she said to me, she's like, yeah, Kimberly, I get that there's a process for the big five publisher and the prestige and whatever. She said at the time, she's like, I'm 65
Yeah.
and I want to get it out. And so now she's 67
Yes.
and has a novel out in the world and
Yes.
has another one coming.
And it's
Yeah.
fantastic.
And it's fantastic. So
Yes.
it's like there's this whole second wind of creativity
Right. Yes.
and growth
Yes.
that I think you can talk yourself out of. Because I know people in their 50s
Yes.
who are just like, oh yeah, I know. In
Too
their
old to try
40s,
that.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
I'll just stick like someone who's like 46 and
Yeah.
comes to me and goes, well, I'm just gonna stick at this nonprofit till I retire. I'm like, what? That's like that's
How do you
20
know that's gonna
years.
happen?
And why would
Exactly.
you do something?
Well, and I feel like I didn't even come into my own until my 40s.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I mean, I
Right,
didn't
right.
have a bad life by any stretch, but I felt like I finally found myself and wasn't
Yeah.
afraid to
Yeah.
really be myself. So
Yeah.
I can't imagine being like, and this is it, I'm done.
Right. I as you're talking about this, I'm thinking of several experiences that I've had in every decade of my life,
Yeah.
of my adult life. Like when I was in my 20s, I was thinking about going into museum conservation,
Okay.
and which is a hard road, like from the degree education.
It's a
perspective.
long
It's
process.
a long road, and so I was looking at what that would look like, and I said to one of my colleagues who was in his 40s at the time, I said, that's going to easily take me 10 years just to get the degree, get to the point where I can apply
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
program
yeah,
and then
yeah,
yeah.
to get the degree. I said, I'll be 40, and he said, Maggie, you're going to be 40 anyway.
Anyway, you're going to be it
Right?
anyway.
And now I chose not to go that route.
Sure, but good point
I'll
made.
never forget that he
No?
said that ever. Or when we decided to leave DC, one of the reasons we did it, when we did it, was because my husband and I were talking about it, and I said, this is not a retirement move. This is an encore career move.
Yeah.
And so we're doing it now. Like, I've got to get this done by the time I'm 45.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And so then you do something crazy that you would have done in your 20s, which is quit your job, sell your house, move across country. You have no job,
Yeah.
land in a new city.
Mhm.
But I didn't talk myself out of it.
No.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
too late. I'll just have to wait till I retire. But I know a lot of people who have
Because
done
it's that internal
right
ageism.
at
Yeah,
any
that's a good
age.
point.
You can
Yeah.
talk
Yeah.
yourself out.
Well, there's a lady in our Atlanta chapter, Jan, that I follow her on Facebook. That's how I really keep up with her. But she has taken advantage in Georgia. I don't know if this is in every state, but in Georgia, once you hit 65, you can attend any state university tuition free.
Tuition
She
free.
already has her doctorate. She is going back and getting other degrees because they fascinate her, and she works full time.
Yeah.
But that's what she's just an education seeker, and I'm like, I love that someone. I mean, like at that age, I'd be like,
I'm so going to be
good.
doing that. I want
But
to.
I
I want to
love
study
that.
art history. I want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you in your state? We have a thing called OSHR, but I think it's a national thing. It's
an acronym.
It's associated with universities. So there's one up at Colorado State University in Fort Collins.
Is it like for older adults?
It's lifelong learning.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. That's
but
what
they're
this is.
always tied
Yes.
to a university.
Yes, that's what this is.
And it's like every semester they come up with a catalog,
Yep.
and it's just like, wow, there is something for everyone
Whether
there.
it's photography or
travel,
Yeah.
or
bird watching. I mean, it's just
and
amazing.
Even my husband, who has a PhD and is interested in the most esoteric topics,
I'm down with that.
always finds something. At
Mhm.
least one this semester, 3 classes he took, because there's a lot of retired professors
Sure.
who teach
Sure.
Yeah.
in their retirement, and so like literally something for everyone. And
Yeah.
I know for sure for my husband, the day that he can no longer learn is the day he croaks.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a muscle. Let's use
Yeah,
it.
use
Yeah.
it or lose it.
So
I was gonna say we're gonna be here. We could talk forever.
I would
We
love
could.
if we could end with talking about maybe any examples or anything that you've come across where it's that intergenerational sort of collaboration that we touched on earlier.
Mhm.
That I think you saw an example of here at the conference, but are there any examples or any ideas of how that's maybe come about in the workplace that you could share that maybe you've
Right.
discovered or experienced?
Yeah, and the session that I attended yesterday
Yeah.
was a lot about that, and it was co-led by a millennial and a Gen Xer. Which I thought was great, who worked together.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was a really, I mean, that's what I want to take away from this. It's like, what are
Yeah.
these positive next steps? And to me, at least at my age, I think that mentoring is a big, big piece of that.
Yeah.
That is fair.
And of course, GPA has a mentoring program.
They
And
sure
I
do.
have mentored a lot of people.
That's
And
awesome.
I'm going to keep doing it.
It makes me wonder if we could flip it and like maybe, because I would love to be a mentee.
Yeah.
I really enjoy working with certain aspects of AI and certain aspects of technology and
Yeah.
other things. And I would love to be mentored in that. And
Yes.
maybe that's another example, like
Yeah.
sharing what you know and then learning from
Right.
your mentee. I think that's
Yeah.
where you're going to, because you're
Right.
fresh viewpoints, but it might, you're not too old to have a mentor. Maybe that could be
No.
another takeaway.
No, when I made my career transition into grant writing, one of the ways I got into that space was I volunteered with a couple of local nonprofits, and I said, okay, here's what I can bring to the table that has nothing to do with grant writing, right? 'Cause that
Right.
wasn't my strength yet. But in exchange, I want to learn
Fair.
from you your process. So they didn't need a grant writer, but they were willing to share that, and in
Smart.
exchange, I would share some of my knowledge. And
That's
so
such an important
it was
point.
just like a little volunteer gig.
But you were giving and getting, because I've been on the
Yes.
receiving end of someone going, I'd love to volunteer as a grant writer. At the time I was in the
Yeah,
agency. I'm
right.
like, that is great, but you need to teach me on the weekends because I work full time. So
right.
I just want to point out that that's not the way to go about it.
No.
And that you went about it
Right.
in the best possible way.
Yeah. I think so. And I think, when you think about it, I don't know if anyone's doing this. It would be fun to find out within GPA, within that mentee program. Like, there's no reason I can't sign up as a mentee.
Right?
No, there's not.
Are we
I
doing
know.
that, Gen Xers? Are we signing up as mentees?
I have not yet, but I
Are
would.
there any people who have signed up as mentors who are, Gen Z
I don't know.
and can
That's a good
help us with
question.
that AI thing or whatever?
I'm
we
ready
wanna
to
know?
volunteer
Yeah.
as tribute after talking to you. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Let's find out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Let's
I would
just do it.
totally,
Let's
I would do that.
Let's test it and see if we could get some
Or it could be a,
bi-directional mentoring.
I can
Yeah.
I can mentor you through career moves. I really want to understand more about these different platforms or how
Yeah.
this interacts or something like.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Right.
Well, and it can even be, I have a local friend of mine. She owns her own consulting business around, like, she builds websites and does social media
Yeah.
marketing for companies. And she had just posted on Facebook. She's like, hey, if anybody's interested, I just need someone to help out here and there to help out with social media posting.
pays only $10 an hour and it's only a few hours a month. So it's not like, but if you're a stay-at-home mom, want to earn a little extra money. Well, I reached out to her and I said, I'm interested. And she's like, you saw the pay. She's like, I know as a grant writer, you make way more than that. I said, yes, but I said, I'm starting my own company. I need to learn how to do this. And I said, for me, $10 an hour plus what you're going to be able to teach.
You're getting paid
you
to
can
learn.
teach me,
Right.
I would be thrilled. And I said, now I'm probably work for you for about a year because I'll probably get what I need. So
Yeah.
I'm just going to be very upfront. So if you're hoping to have someone that's going to stay with you and grow into other positions, that's not me. She's like, no, I'm in a pickle right now. That is perfect.
Yeah.
And so I did. I worked for her for about a year.
Yeah.
And there was another girl that did most of the creative stuff. I was mostly doing the back end posting and scheduling, but I got to see what she was creating. And she was willing to spend a few hours with me, teaching me some of these things. And it really did, I think, up our game and what we were posting for our business.
Right.
Hello.
But it was, I mean, it was a job, but for me, it was a mentoring kind of thing. And it was, I mean, they were all about, actually, the girl who taught me, she was way younger that was doing all the social media stuff.
Sure.
It was fabulous.
Yeah. I think there's lots of creative ways to have that intergenerational, again, collaboration.
Yeah.
And as we do that and we're learning those things, whatever those, like, I'm going to learn this and from you and you're going to learn this from me, but we're also learning how to work with each other, with people of different generations, different ages, you know, like there's all that, the side benefit that's going to help address this issue in the long run about how we deal with ageism in the workplace. Can we wipe it out? Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah. And in
amazing.
turn, then have amazing agencies that transform communities because they're not all mired in, you know, we can only have people of a certain age doing certain things.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think, and the problem isn't going to be solved by, you know, like it's not the boomers' problem to solve. It's not, you know, the Gen Z's problem to solve. It's like working together.
Yeah.
To figure it all out.
To figure it out. Yeah.
And Gen Alpha because they're coming.
Yes. The next wave.
Yeah.
This has been a marvelous discussion. Thank you so much.
I enjoyed it.
I think we could have talked for another 3 hours.
I know. I was like, should we go for a part 2? But it's like, no, we got it. But if there are people who would like to explore this topic with you, or they're looking for a grant consultant, what is the best way to get in touch with you?
Oh, well, if you happen to be a GPA, you can come to my session.
Yeah,
that's
Today
right.
at 3:00, and we can have more of this discussion.
And so for the people who are listening in 2025, what are they going to do?
Right. Well, I would say if you're a GPA member, you can find me on Grant Zone.
Fair.
Yes.
And if you're not a GPA member, you can reach out to my email address or my website. You can find me through there. My LinkedIn profile.
Okay.
And what is your website?
My website is storyforgeonline.com.
Very good.
Great
and we'll
name.
provide all these links in our show notes so people can find you there too.
Yeah, but and I just want to say, because of what we've been talking about, like I'm always open to talking to people.
Yeah.
Doesn't, you know, it's not like, oh, well, I'm not available to, you know, right now. No.
Yeah.
You know, I'll talk to you, and if I don't have what you need, I'll find someone.
Find
else.
somebody.
There you go. Absolutely.
So operators are standing by.
That's right.
I love it. Thanks so much.
Thanks so
Thank
much,
you.
Maggie.
I
It was a pleasure.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks again to today's sponsor, Kim Joyce and Associates. If you want to learn more about their many service offerings, visit kimjoyceandassociates.com. That's KIMJOYCE and associates.com.
So I was so delighted and gratified that we could have this frank and often funny conversation about ageism. It's a topic that affects us all. It's not just about who has the gray hair and who doesn't. It's about how we just form all of these opinions that are so erroneous and stereotypical and harmful just based on someone's appearance, frankly.
Yeah, that's true. We're so honored you chose to spend time with us today. Please join us again in 2 weeks, where we're going to dive into another damaging cultural and personal experience that can affect all of us, known as the imposter syndrome. So we'll talk to you then.
Bye.